So first things first, in the chat box that you should be able to see, I've put 2 links in. The first link is to the active blended learning resources and the wider resources that we've created for transition. And you can find those on that Moodle link there. So basically what I'm going to do tonight is effectively take you through bits of the first workbook that I've created in my topic block. And we're going to be a little bit interactive, and we can just do it in a nice relaxed way because there's not that many people here. The other thing you might also need later on is there's an activity sheet on the main there's an activity sheet on the main page of the website that you would also probably need. So it might be just if you could access that at some point, that'd be good. I will try and just copy and paste there's the Moodle link, and there's the activity sheet link that we're going to do in a little bit. So I'm going to take you through. It is a little bit interactive. I've created some resources. I've tried to design this as what an ABL session could look like, just to give you an idea. And then we're going to have a play, and then we can have a discussion, and that sets you up for the next workshop. If you've got any questions, please drop them in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that as we go through. Alternatively, just unmute the mic and just chip in. But for just etiquette wise, because we are recording it, I am going to try and, if you could keep muted for the minute, that just helps us get the quality right. Okay, so let's make a start. So welcome. My session's called Introduction to Active Blended Learning, but actually the real set title is called Back to the Future and Back Again, Active Blended Learning. Now, to start with, why have I given it that title? First of all, I give all my staff development sessions a bit of a filmy title, but the reason I've called it that is because in 1992, I was doing this. My first job was an educational technologist at the University of Gloucestershire. I then ended up at the University of Plymouth as the L&T lead, alongside my PhD, working with academic staff, doing a lot of work around flexible learning. And it's quite interesting when you look back, and I've got all these masterpieces now of stuff. What we were doing in 92 in terms of open learning and flexible is exactly what we're doing now. There is no difference whatsoever. The only subsequent transformation is that we're doing it online. And again, we were doing it online anyway, and the COVID-19 crisis has forced it on us a little bit. So Back to the Future, because we've gone back to where the future was in 92, and we're not reinventing it, but certainly coming full circle a little bit in terms of the thinking behind how we actually start delivering flexibly and online. And you want to see what happens when these things hit 88 miles an hour. Bang! Right, so what I want to do in this session is get you think about a common vision for what ABL actually means. So the principles for online and blended learning that are underpinning this whole transition, which ActDev and TEL have been working around, is underpinned by active blended learning. So it's really important that there's a real clear understanding of what that actually means. There isn't a definitive definition by any stretch of the imagination, and we all tend to interpret it in our own way. So this is what we're going to have a go at do tonight, but then start to see if we can identify those factors that underpin ABL in terms of design, delivery, and evaluation. And that takes us on to the second workshop I'm going to run later on in the week, where I've created some planning materials to help you start doing it. So this is very much a bit of a precursor to get you thinking about what the principles of ABL actually is. So again, it does come back to the shared vision of what we've actually tried to achieve, but it's really important we get a clear understanding of what it means. Now, I was going to get you to do this. I'm not going to get you to do this one. I'm going to get you to do that one. So could you get your phones out, or on your laptops, could you go to menti.com, and you're going to need to use the passcode 664796. And I'm just going to try and switch over to Chrome, and we'll go there. 66, right. So basically, it's an open-ended question what I'd like you to just do to start with, if it's okay, is could you just write on the, when it comes up, and it's going to allow you to put in a short text box, what does ABL mean to you now? Understanding, experience, no matter, what does it mean to you? In your head, when you heard this was going to be underpinned by ABL, what does ABL mean to you right now? And we're going to do it now. And then if you work through the resources online, the resources then ask you to perhaps revisit that definition after you've worked through everything. At this precise moment in time, I'd just like to know what it means for you now. So that should be live. So just have a go at your own definition. I will do it on mine to make sure it's working. It is working. Excellent. Fantastic, everybody. Thank you. That's brilliant. Excellent. And hopefully you can all see that on my screen. So you can see the results coming in live. How many people have we got in? Right. As you can see, there is no right or wrong answer. There is not a standard definition of what ABL actually is. So you've all put your comments on. So I'm going to now ask for a bit of active audience participation. Would anybody like to unmute and just talk about why they put what they did? Just to get a couple of specific views on audio. Would anybody like to share the perception now you put it down on paper? Don't be shy. Althea.
Hi. Okay, so I've been doing a bit of blended learning, blended teaching, blended learning. The difference with active blended learning is that it's trying to get the students engaged and actively participating, because I find that they're often, well, passively just sit there and expect to just watch videos and somehow absorb knowledge.
Right.
That's it.
So that's a great one to start. Would anybody like to add to that? Althea again. This is like Booth Forsyth play cards or something. Higher, lower.
No, I can't operate the raise hand thing. I was trying to lower it.
Don't no worries. That's fine, don't worry. Here we go. This is the challenges of doing stuff online. So what I'm trying to do here is exactly what an ABL session should be like, that we want to generate some form of synchronous engagement. And how do we actually do that? So I've got you to write using a Mentimeter, so a nice little tool for ABL, and I want to create some discussion that goes alongside it. So welcome to the real world. This is what it's actually like when we do it. And I think if we look back to where we were 3 months ago, my first attempt at doing a session like this was an absolute bloody nightmare. And if I was scoring myself out of 10, it was 5. Thought it was a bit clever than that. And you get better. So it is about engagement. It's not about voiceover PowerPoints by any stretch of the imagination. It's adding that level of depth in terms of what can we actually do to get them to start engaging. Okay. Would anybody else like to chip in? Who's got the next birthday? There you go. The random approach to asking for questions from a very large audience. So if you've got the birthday next, you're up. Who is it? And don't be shy. I'm going to start picking on people. Here we go. Alex.
Yeah, so I think for me...
Don't say it's your birthday today.
No, so no, my birthday's miles away, but I thought I'd chip in. So learning really is a mix of both kind of online and face-to-face, asynchronous and asynchronous learning, and it's where you really need to get the blend between actually getting across core content, but also trying to make it interactive, so with quizzes, with discussion boards, with kind of anything fun you can think that can make the content come alive, that gets the people actually, as Jenny I think was saying, actually gets them involved and participating.
There you go. So you think about the keywords: making it fun, making it alive, bringing out the relational element of what ABL actually is, thinking about if you're doing asynchronous or synchronous delivery. And this session leads into the planning one. And in the planning one, I'm not going to give the game away too much, but ABL is not about at this precise moment in time reinventing the wheel, because you're probably doing a lot of this already. You know, COVID's dropped on us in the last 4 months, but you've all been teaching, you've all been doing blended learning. What you've got to do is perhaps take a step back and just look at those sessions on a week by week basis and go, right, what can I do? I'm not changing anything, because I know the stuff I've got works. I'm getting really good levels of student engagement, and I know they're engaged with it because I'll get the feedback, but I can't deliver it face to face. So I've got to think about, out of all this stuff that I do, what could I put online? What could I do remotely? And they could go away and they could read, and we could do some knowledge check activities, and they could do that perhaps self-directed, asynchronous. But what I really want to do then is prioritize the fun bits. When they come back in and I've got that window of opportunity with them in a session, I want to blow them out the water, so to speak, and have a really synchronous, highly engaging discussion when they're all chipping in, or perhaps you put them in small groups, because I'm conscious of whether you're running a large lecture or tutorials. But it's about not starting from scratch. It's about looking at what you've done and then working out what's the best to put in the right place. And it's a combination of different things. It's reflecting the student journey, thinking about what would you do before the session? What would you do during the session? What would you do after the session? It's about developing that narrative with the students at the beginning, is that I'm here with you tonight, and we're doing a session on active blended learning. Where students, we still also need to educate and induct / transition the students into this way of learning, because some of them will have done it before. Some of them have done it at sixth form, surprise. But you need to have that narrative at the beginning in the first session and start telling the students, right, this is how my session is going to run, guys. It's going to be very different to what you've had before. But actually, the level of thinking that's gone into this has been quite significant, and you're going to end up with something that actually, in hindsight, you might find more engaging than what you had before. And I think that has to be the aspiration of what we're actually trying to do. Okay. So it's interaction. It's a nice mix of pedagogy. I always joke, because I'm old, and I don't know if anybody else is old enough to remember this, but I do. The 1970s Gareth Hunt advert when he did the Nescafe, shh, 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 watch your blend. And that's what it's all about. It's mixing all these different types of pedagogies together to create something that's different. And it's different on a week by week basis. You're not going to do the same structure every week. You're going to try and vary it. The students are going to have a diet of different types of activities that are pedagogically led. That's the most other important thing to get right, because there's a real danger that this week you can come to the festival and you can go, oh, Nearpod and Padlet and this and that, and you can get wowed by the technology. That's fine, and it's great that you start playing with the technology, but you've also got to have an understanding of, right, what is it I'm trying to do? So you've got to think about alignment, constructive alignment to your learning outcomes, to your subject content, and how it's going to support the assessment. But you're doing that anyway, because you've delivered face to face. So that's the most important thing. It isn't anything too new. You're doing it, and that's the most important thing, to give you the confidence to actually get stuck in and have a go. And it's about having a play and having some fun with it, because if you can get into that mindset, it does become quite engaging. Word of warning, I started writing the resources on Moodle, and it takes slightly longer than you might anticipate. So be prepared for that when you actually start putting it together. So there is an upfront issue with time, but the beauty is, once you've done this, you've got the resources. And if, say, oh, it would be nice to think that this time next year things might get back to normal, but I'm not going to hold my breath, that when you can get back to a face-to-face delivery mechanism, and we are back to normal in some shape or form, you're going to transform how you teach your students. You're going to be able to flip stuff because you've got it there already, and actually have more engaging sessions when you have them face to face. So there's a short-term cost to this in terms of time, but actually there is a real longer-term opportunity coming in terms of how we actually structure all these resources. Right, this is exactly the problem. I have no volunteers to say anything, so I have to pick on individuals. So yeah, how do you get students to engage? Right, well, the resources that we've got and all the little workshops we're going to do this week are all about showing you the kind of things that you can do with the different types of technology to get students to start engaging with you. So we ran it. I don't know if anybody was at our Tea at 3 session this afternoon. Everybody was very quiet because we left it as a bit of an open forum. And nobody wanted to stick their head above the parapet. So we're going to do those at 3 o'clock every day this week. Tomorrow, there's going to be an activity linked to it. So people can do stuff remotely on their phones without having to put their name to it, to give them the confidence just to actually start chipping in. So there you go. So you're beginning to get the definition of ABL. So I'm now going to remember, the other thing is you've got to master the... Right, so let's go back to...
Can I ask a quick question?
Hello, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at everything that people have posted. I can see that when we talk about blended learning, some of us think, you know, it's like your Nescafe advert. It's a blend, a mix, and trying to find the right balance between remote and face-to-face. But a lot of comments are more about flip teaching, which for me would be the lecture is remote and then the debrief or the tutorial is face-to-face. Do you tend to view blended and flip teaching as synonymous, or do you have any views on that?
I have, and it's in my PowerPoint. So let me. Okay, I'm going to cheat and drop to that. Actually, no. Let's. Hang on, I've broken it. It's if you imagine a spectrum of opportunity. Sorry, I think I might have just broken PowerPoint. If you think of a spectrum of opportunity in the prior to COVID, I've embedded something in a PowerPoint. It wants to break it. See if I can move on. Bloody well, as well. Right. If you can all see, can you all see my PowerPoint? Yep. Right. So if you can, what we're saying is in the past or prior COVID, for me, and this is kind of like the same message I was giving to people in 92, is that for me, active blended learning or flexible learning, there's an awful lot of overlap between the two, is this spectrum of opportunities. So one end you got face-to-face and the other end you got fully online. And it's about, on that spectrum, finding an opportunity where you actually feel comfortable engaging in that kind of space. Now, what's happened, if we think about COVID-19, is that, look at that, COVID has pushed us to that end of the scale. If you think about like at a health check, we're all in this end. We have said goodbye to face-to-face teaching for the minute. Now, I know the university has said that there will be time allocation and some students will get face-to-face delivery. It's not going to be all, so plan for delivering online. So we're in that end. So it's within that end, it's what does that look like? So when you start thinking about that, we need to think about the degree of synchronicity that you want. So what kind of activities do you want to create live with the students? Something like that we've just done with a Mentimeter or Poll Everywhere that you can do face-to-face. But equally, those types of activities, you can also do, some of them allow you to do it asynchronously. So the students can go away, they can do an activity, they can report back, and then other students can comment on that, and then you intervene in a synchronous fashion slightly later on. You've also got to think about constructive alignment. So again, this whole notion of it being pedagogically led, that it fits the learning outcomes, it fits the content that you want to deliver, but it's also supporting the assessment. Now, there is space at this precise moment in time that if you're delivering something and you need to make a change, you can't do anything too big, but there is still an opportunity at a local level, talk to your heads of program, to make slight tweaks at a local level if you need to amend elements of your curriculum. And I mean, it's that local level stuff that you can do internally on the routes rather than anything big or structural. But you also need to think about the level, because what active blended learning looks like for perhaps a level 4 student might be different to level 5, to level 6, level 7. So it's just thinking about that levelness of what you're actually going to ask them to do, what you're going to ask them to do perhaps individually, and they go away on their work on their own, but also what are you actually then going to ask them to do in small groups. So one of the most important things perhaps when we do fully online is a mechanism whereby you can actually put them into small groups to start, and then they can go off and do things as a team. So that might be that you set up preset groups in Moodle and you assign the students to that, and then you tell them to go off and have a meeting. How they run that meeting is entirely down to them. They may decide to do it in a Google Meet. So it's that structure that we need to think about. And then the other issues around kind of like equality, diversity and inclusion, to make sure that the approaches that we do take are inclusive. And again, all the training that we put on Moodle and all the stuff that's happening in the festival this week is designed to capture some of these kind of like bigger themes in terms of what we need to do, in addition to student co-creation engagement. So you've got this spectrum. Now, some people will be really happy all the way over, absolutely confident, highbrow, doing it all. But other people, no, I'm quite happy doing that. I know it works. I'm doing slightly more. This is my approach. So we talk a lot about being student-centered. But what I would also say is actually for 1 minute in this whole agenda, be selfish to your selfish, because it's about what are you interested in? Where do your skills and competencies lie in terms of actually taking this forward? And certain people want to do certain things, other people want to do something else, and that's absolutely fine. If we all did the same, it'd be exactly the same. Right. So look, so where we got Brendan, do role plays work fully online? Anything on their topic this week? No, but if you come to my creativity session tomorrow, Brendan, yes, because they can, because you can create interviews online where students can interview each other. They can do, if you've ever used Padlet, the students can upload very short videos and they can post and they can do scenarios and all sorts of things like that. So yes, that's fine. What's the difference between blended learning and active blended learning? Active learning is more active. It's just got a high level of engagement, a consistent level of engagement across the piece. I think we can get bogged down in what's the word I'm looking for? Semantics, isn't it? What the difference is. The students are active. We're giving them things to do. They're learning by doing. So I need to take you back a bit. So because I jumped to answer Michelle's question, I jumped ahead of myself a little bit. So that's the problem with doing something PowerPoint. It ends up being very sequential. Now, what is ABL? So if you look at the resources that we put on the website, where we took a great lead, I was very briefly at Roehampton last year, and when I was at Roehampton, I was responsible for setting up the ABL strategy in the business school. And to do that, we really took notice of what Northampton did. Northampton have gone full tilt active blended learning over the last couple of years, and they've had quite a mixed response quite initially to do it. On Thursday morning, Ali Alimini, who is the Dean of Learning and Teaching at Northampton, is actually giving a bit of a keynote on Thursday morning and talking about active blended learning at Northampton. So please come along to that, because I think you'll find it really interesting. ABL is a combination. It's all sorts of different bits with the technology, if you like, pulling those together. So let's have a go at doing something else. Right, if you can go to the chat. On the chat, I've put a link to an activity sheet that you can download off the. We'll put that up again so you can find it. Again, this is just a little exercise that's come from Northampton. So if you follow that link through, you should get to a little activity sheet, and that activity sheet is showing on the screen at the moment. And basically, again, this has come out of the activity book the resource that we've created. It's one little activity based on around a few. And all this is this is the 11 principles of what ABL is from Northampton. They're not in any particular order, they're just listed. And it's the activity that you can do in the book is what's the opposite. But what I like to do on that activity sheet is, what would you say, put them in your own order. At the moment, they're not ordered. If I was to ask you to put them in order, what would you put first? Right. Have a look at that for 5 minutes, and just, if you download it or just off the screen read. If you can then go to polev.com and just follow the hyperlink that you see on the screen. polev.com/Andy Clegg 549. You'll get Poll Everywhere. And basically what this Poll Everywhere does, if you can see I'll do it on my iPad so you can see, it's basically you've got all 11 statements in order. If you just very simply click on a statement, let's have a look, and two little, an up and down arrow will appear on the left-hand side. If you just click the up and down arrow, they move around, so you can identify, you can put them in order of priority. So what I'd be really interested to know is, what do you see as the most important out of those 11 principles? Which do you think is the most important one? So I'm just going to go to get this right. So it's right, that's activated. So as you've decided which order they go in, I'll give you 5 minutes or so to have a go at doing that. Put them in order, and your results will appear on the screen that you can hopefully see in front of you. So it'll be interesting to see what you think is important out of those priorities that Northampton came up with. And again, there's no right or wrong answer because Northampton didn't put them in order. So but I wonder if we can come up with a common viewpoint. Hope you're all right there, Lucy. I've just read your comment, feeling pretty passive now. Hence why I brought this with me. It's interesting, if you're feeling passive now and you've been online having an intensive day and all these meetings, how do you think your learners feel? How do you keep that excitement and energy going for students It won't be in front of you where you can actually read the room and you can spot when they're actually dropping off. So again, something we're going to cover in the festival this week is how you create the relational element in active blended learning to keep those students interested. And again, there's been some really interesting articles in the Guardian on THE about, yeah, we can do all this online delivery, but the students still crave that face-to-face. They want to know that somebody is at the other end of the phone. Just as you would if you were contacting Amazon or had a delivery online or something like that. They judge us on the same basis as they would other service organizations in terms of their online experience. Right, so can I ask if you could have a go at just then moving to Poll Everywhere, and we'll see what the overall results kind of like look like. Just trying to work out how many people have. Right, so as you go in, if you've all got the link, very simply in Poll Everywhere, you'll see a list of the 11 statements. Just click on one of the blue bars, and then a left and right, up and down button will appear on the left-hand side, and all you do is just click on that to move the respective statements up and down. And then at the bottom it says submit, and just click, and the answers will go live on the screen. Right, are we all, just give me an indication if you've managed to do that or are still in the process. Thank you, Lucy. Brilliant. Right, that's very kind. Lovely. Okay, carry on. We can have a chat over it and keep going, and the results will come in as they come in. But again, this is another nice example of a way of actually getting this remote engagement. And a nice element of using something like Poll Everywhere is that it stays up for quite a long time. So you can set it as a self-directed activity. The students can contribute to it. It doesn't come down, it stays up, so you can see the results building. And if you send the students another email link, they can actually see the results live themselves as all the students actually start contributing to it. Again, it's a nice little tool that you can actually use. It's a nice example of all right. Does it have a student cap? It's good for a couple of hundred, so I think for a large group you're probably okay. Do we have a license? No, it's actually free. Poll Everywhere, just Google Poll Everywhere, and it's a free app. And what I'll do is on the website, I will put up a copy of my app guide, which has got lots of different apps in it. It's a nice example of what we call an ARS, or an audience response system. The university has a site license for Nearpod. It has a site license for Vivox. And we will also be shortly getting a site license for Padlet, which seems to be the one that's come through. So we're supporting those three, but by no means does it preclude you using anything else that's out there as well. because each to their own. Everybody does something slightly different, and I want to encourage that diversity, not necessarily restrict it. Right. I think it's a bit more than that. Check. Right. Okay. So let's have a look where you're at on this one. So learner-centered. So what we got? Number one, learner-centered and interactions-based. Student autonomy and active learning. Students are given the scaffold. It's changing. Okay. It's interesting. We're talking about this in a COVID-19 context. But these are the same types of principles that you would still do anyway. You know, we've been working towards this for years in terms of we want our students to be learner-centered. We want to base it on interactions. We want to give them autonomy when we're teaching. We want to give them active learning. We want to give them the scaffold. You know, you've heard this over and over again. What we're now doing is focusing on when we start designing active blended learning, how do we translate that to a more online environment? And again, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about, right, what do I do at this precise moment in time that makes my students learner-centered and interactions-based? And they might, oh, I actually get them to read, and they come back and discuss that. And we get really good feedback around these small group sessions where there's a lot of peer engagement and they're talking to each other and sharing their experiences. I don't want to lose that. Okay, how do I replicate it? Oh, well, the answer might be, actually, you could do something like that in a forum. Okay, a bit dull. Perhaps do it in a Padlet where they're all contributing and putting little videos up. So what we're trying to get at is we're pedagogically led. This is what we want to do. This is what we need the session to achieve to get the student engagement. This is how we actually can use the technology to support that level of engagement and meet these. Just one, and this comes out in the planning session. It's very interesting. At the bottom, you've got team approach to design. And I think perhaps one of the most important things when we start thinking about active blended learning is that perhaps that team approach to design comes a little bit higher up. So when you start planning about ABL and you start sharing resources and get colleagues to look at the type of stuff that you're putting online and ask them to sign it off, get them to critique it from a student perspective. So when you're thinking of, you know, you're designing your own modules over the course of 12 weeks, it's about making sure that there's a degree of consistency and also depth and diversity over different modules a student might be taking. And that only comes if you're talking to other module coordinators, so you get that bigger picture of what active blending looks like for a student on a particular route. So right, and that kind of like leads us nicely into the, if I go on, I'm going back to that. So I did something very clever here and tried to embed it in. Right, so we've done that. Done that. So I'm just going back to where I was. So there we go. It's Monday night and I'm giving you a screen full of sweets. What does that mean? Would anybody like to suggest why I've gone crazy on a Monday night and given you a screen full of sweets? Pick and mix. That's it. So blended learning, I've always treated treats. Yes, not for the students, for the staff. I've always tend to treat, for me, active blended learning is a bit like a pick and mix. So this is, you know, you probably recognize this. This is a white stuff shop, but imagine walking into an old school sweet shop, or you're on the pedagogy aisle at Sainsbury's and you're walking down with your trolley. You've gone in, you've done your planning. You're not doing this willy-nilly. You've gone in with a shopping list of what you need to be able to do. So you've got an idea, right? I need something to do that, right? Well, that's going to be this week. I think I'll use Mentimeter for that. Oh, that could be a Nearpod. That's going to be a discussion board. That's going to be that. So you're going in and you're pulling these all together. So there's different pedagogies coming through, and the technology, the VLE or whatever you're using, is that the digital interface is actually what pulls it all together. And what you're trying to do, and just to quote Emma Winter from marketing, which I think is a great line, it's, I love purple shrimps, but I want it up bag. And it's the same with the students. If all you're doing every session is a Kahoot and a discussion forum, the student's going to get bored quickly. So it's about varying the content, varying the mix on a week by week basis, that you're just jazzing it up a little bit. So there may be some consistent things that you're doing. So for example, you might use Kahoot on a regular basis as perhaps a knowledge check, or an introductory activity each week, and then you could perhaps keep a leaderboard of the scores in terms of, so it gets a bit competitive with the students so they can see how they're all doing. But just changing the composition of each session as you go through to make it engaging. Again, come back to the point, it's pedagogically led, but it's doing, and it's fit for purpose. And so that's why I kind of like go for this pick and mix approach, because for me it's about finding the right tools and not just using a tool because it's there, but because it fits the purpose that we're actually trying to get to. And of course, by doing that, what we're then trying to support is the overall principles that we've actually come up with to support the transition to online learning in September. Okay, but again, everybody has their own different ingredients for what that could look like. Alex, sorry, I've just noticed you've got your hand up. Did you want to ask something? Alex, did you want to ask something? You've got your hand up in the chat. No, okay, that's absolutely fine. Right. So again, it's just fine. This is all about finding where are you comfortable on that spectrum. It really is, and it's about making sure that you've got the skills. The other element of this is just to relate this back to the flexible learning, because for me this is still flexible learning, and this is, again, if you go on the Moodle page with the active blended learning resources, and also the learning and teaching resources on Apex, Advanced HE have just released a new guidance note on how to engage with flexible learning. And that's quite a good read as well, and you might find that quite interesting. And again, we'll put some links for all these resources on the festival website so you can see it. Fatih, did you have a question?
Yes, please.
Away, sir.
So let's assume now we don't go back and then we have to deliver online. So
Yes.
if I do virtual classroom, would that be a face-to-face and online learning like blended learning, or it has to be a physical face-to-face with an online virtual, you know what I mean?
Indeed I do. So let's assume, for instance, that they don't come back, and I think Paul Hayes did our welcome this morning. Some of you might have seen that, and Paul was saying, in your head, also be prepared that we may have a second lockdown. So, you know, I would advise everybody to be prepared for that eventual that we're probably going to get a second lockdown. But in your blend, think about, and this is the planning resources, what I would encourage you all to do, and again, the planning resources you can download, is you start by looking at a session and you think, right, what am I doing now? And what could I transfer over? So part of your mix could be that you are doing some face-to-face live synchronous delivery. But what you then got to bear in mind is that perhaps some students haven't managed to get to that session. So you perhaps need an online equivalent, or you record that session so the students that weren't there can see it. So the blended can be a mix of asynchronous, synchronous, depending on what it is you're actually delivering and what you need to get across to the students. For the most part, I think you'll probably find in this situation that you're probably putting more asynchronous on, because you're thinking about, right, what can I get the students to do that's self-directed, that they could go away and work on, but I can structure stuff in a way that's really engaging. So I can use all this technology in a way to get them engaged. So I'm going to send them off. They're going to do a little activity. They're all going to comment on it. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to run a synchronous workshop where I want them all to start feeding in, and I want to give some feedback. But I would capture that, or I would do a separate little video capture of me discussing what they should have found. So those people that couldn't engage in the synchronous activity can catch up. So they're still on the same path with everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, it's up to you, my friend. your approach is going to be different to somebody else's. It's going to be different to somebody else's again. But as long as you're being driven by your learning outcome and your content and what your assessment is, that's all we can ask you to do, because you're following the correct path. What you then have to look at is the embellishment and how you be. And one of the sessions I'm running this week is how to be creative online. And what we've prepared, I'm doing a session on I'm doing a session tomorrow on creative recipes for online creativity and playfulness. And what we've done is put some little recipe cards together to show you the types of things that you can do. And I've come up with some starters, some mains, and a few desserts. And some of them are really short. They take 20 minutes to put together, and you're off. And they're really quick, using some of the technology to have a bit of fun. Some of them are a little bit more engaging. You know, they're going to take you half an hour, 40 minutes to put together. But the idea is that they do different things, but they're all designed to get the students engaged and to be creative. But the start of that session tomorrow is thinking, what does it mean to be creative? So the most important thing that we do is make sure that we're pedagogically led. That's the most important thing. I'm conscious, again, you know, this is the whole point of this week. We're going to introduce you to lots of different types of technology. I'm going to try, I know who's here. I can send you all round a link to an app guide that I've actually produced. I know Michelle's got a copy of it because it's been circulated, but I'm very happy to share that. What we've done with that is broken it down into different bits. The planning, where we go next with this one, is the planning workshop, and the planning workshop is based on a couple of approaches which fit. So we've used the ABC guide for distance learning that's been developed at UCL, and we've also used Gilly Salmon's guide for 5 steps for online learning to help do that. So if you go and look now on the planning resources, you've got two things. You've got a planning sheet that you can download and start working through. The other thing you've also got is an interactive PowerPoint that you use in edit mode, and that's based around the ABC toolkit, and it allows you to start thinking about different types of activities that you might want to do, and that's capturing the 6 learning styles as well, in terms of discussion, collaboration, practice, presentation. So we're thinking a little bit about the kind of technology that's actually out there. What I would say to people is I'm very conscious that a week like this can be incredibly overwhelming, that you sit there and go, oh my God, Andy, you're saying do that. I haven't even started doing that yet, or I'm not doing that. I haven't even heard of that, and I haven't even heard of that. Do not worry. We're not, ABL is not about perfection. Getting this transition to online learning in September is not about perfection. It really isn't. Students don't expect perfection. Yes, they want quality, but we're not here. We're not going to be giving Oscars next year for video production. We're not, and it needs to be honest. I did a presentation last week for an advanced HE conference. It took me 15 goes to get it right because I was being a perfectionist, and I was making little mistakes. No, I'll start again. I got to the point where I said, and I actually said on the video, right, this is my 15th take. Whatever happens now, I'm going for it, so apologies. And it's just that bit of normality, that you are a normal human being trying to put these resources together if you're doing online videos, that makes it fun, that builds up that relational aspect with the students. Look at the videos online when these lecturers get a young child or whatever coming in and, you know, involved in the video. It's life. Make it real. Doesn't have to be perfect. But as long as it's pedagogically and the students are engaged in that process, and you are having a conversation with those students about what you're doing and why, and what the expectation is, you will be on a very secure footing. And I think that's where we're here to. The festival is designed to spark your interest and definitely to spark your curiosity and creativity. And post workshop and post festival this week, we're here to help. So if anybody would like a one-to-one, or you want to touch base, this is what ActDev and TEL are here to support you with, to make sure that you are in a very confident position for September. I won't do that. We won't bother with that one. But my next workshop is called Active Blended Learning. Yes, it's got another film quote. It's called Alfred, Let's Go Shopping. There is a prize for the person that can tell me what film that's from and why. So come to the sessions later in the week and find out. But it also links to the Active Blended Learning resources that we've actually got on Moodle as well. So you can actually have a work through at your own speed on those. They have been designed as active blended resources using the book function in Moodle, but they've got lots of quizzes and lots of different types of activity embedded. So if people haven't heard of Kahoot, we can cover that. I've used a bit of H5P. I don't know whether people have used H5P before. We're running some sessions on that later in the week. If you've not used H5P, that's HTML5 that you can embed in via your Moodle pages. And if you want a little bit of fun, H5P is excellent. You know, really easy to create things like word searches, as knowledge check activities, interactive elements. So there's a lot of tech out there, and the aim of the festival this week is to perhaps showcase some of that to give you the confidence to go forward. Well, yes, I'm conscious I've rambled on. Would anybody like? I'm just conscious of the time as well. Would anybody like to chip in? Any comments on what we covered tonight? I'm very grateful for you all coming. Hopefully that's got you heading in the right direction a little bit. But does anybody have any concerns, or do you perceive any challenges with this that we think we need to help you with? Please put your hand up or you and just tell us what you think.
Andy?
Hiya.
Yeah, it's Michelle. I put something in the chat, but I'll ask it. One of my concerns when we use a lot of platforms to make the teaching or tutorial more interactive is that there's a bit of a learning curve at any time, you know, to get used to Padlet or to used to you know, with that pull everywhere. It took me a little while to find where the arrows were and so on. And obviously with a large group of students, it can be difficult to make sure everybody has enough time to complete it. I tend to think that it's best if we find 2 or 3 platforms that we know how to use well. We can help the students to use them well rather than use too much, and that the variety, what you call the pick and mix, can come from instead for the type of exercise. You know, one week I could do something which is about using a computer software, the other week a case study. So would you agree with me that we can't saturate the students with a new app every single week, or do you still think that the pick and mix of different technology is what brings novelty to them?
Michelle, thank you for that. I think that's a really valid point. The research, the feedback from the students is that they find it a little bit overwhelming that each week you're asking them to do something different. Oh God, here we go. And it's just like, you know, and I've done a lot of this in the past, and sometimes the students, if you do one thing too much or do the same thing, it becomes a bit of a novelty and the students get bored really quickly. But if you take the 3, there are 3 core software that the university supports. So we've got Nearpod, we've got Vvox, and we've got Padlet. And with those 3, it's like having, the analogy I would give, because I'm doing my recipe session tomorrow, is that that's like having a stocked larder, because each one can do an awful lot of things. If I'm doing 2 sessions later in the week on Padlet, and I can create so many different types of recipes in Padlet alone, using the functionality in Padlet that makes it really engaging. I could do different types of boards. I can add a map in. I can get the students to upload images or video. I can get them to connect. I can lead discussions. So one platform generates an awful lot of functionality. So it is, you're absolutely right. Instead of perhaps trying to do everything and bombarding them, it is possibly a little bit more advisable to perhaps come down and think what it does. That, however, just as the precursor or a warning for that, is depends what you're doing, because some of them work asynchronously well, some of them work synchronously well. So it's just finding the right space to make sure that you're actually using the right one. And again, that's what this week's about in terms of getting safe. So for example, what I've done tonight is actually lifted a couple of exercises from the book. So this exercise that you've done with the poll everywhere tonight is in the workbook. But what I've done in the workbook as if it was students, is I've done a little, if you've not used Poll Everywhere before, here's a 60-second video around to show how to use it. So I'm asking them to do something, but I've then gone, here's how, if you've not used it before, this is how it works. So I showed them how to do the quiz. So it's making sure that you're putting that level of instruction in to go with it. But remember, the students are savvy. They are digital natives. They pick up the technology really quickly. But again, it's possibly containing the diet a little bit. Still changing the blend in terms of what you do, but don't necessarily do the same thing over and over again because they will get bored. And then again, the festival this week, the sessions on Padlet, the sessions on Vivoc, the sessions on Nearpod that we've all put together to show you how you can really use these kind of apps to best advantage. John Caro, you are correct, my friend, Batman. But can you tell me why it links to blended learning? And if you could tell me why, when we come back to university, I will buy you a coffee. I have to think about that one. Right, has anybody got any other comments? I'll have to rewatch. Yeah, it's to do with the blend. Any comments from anybody? That's good. I'm very grateful for you all coming tonight. I'm glad you found. I really hope it's on. Just let you know, if this was normal life at Mercantile, you're always very welcome to come over for coffee at Mercantile. It's at home at the moment, but I do have a very nice coffee machine and I do espresso coffee. So you're all welcome to visit. Unfortunately, oh, okay, right. If everybody's happy, I do tend to take silence as we're there. Hopefully you will find that useful. What I would suggest you do is just, when you go through this process, just keep a note of the kind of things that you're doing. We ran a fellowship workshop this afternoon to think how you can link the two together. When you're planning this session that we've done tonight, if you were writing your fellowship up, would be an A1 an A1 discussion about how you're thinking about design and what's influencing your pedagogy. So always bear that in mind. Keep a little notebook of all the types of things that you're doing and what you've read, because the opportunity out of this crisis is that all this stuff that you're doing now is really good for fellowship applications if you're thinking about being a fellow. If you're looking at senior fellow, it's helpful. Think about, for D3 people, how you're leading, how you're supporting others, how you're driving the change and taking everybody else with you. Okay, but that's most important. But please, the Moodle link's there. It's also on the homepage on the festival website. Please have an opportunity to look through the resources that we've created. Download the planning resources. I'm going to take you through those later in the week. And there's 5 other topic blocks, from planning, assessment of feedback online, student engagement, and we've all created standalone resources that you can work through at your own pace. And they're also designed to be indicative examples of what ABL modules look like. On that note, I will say thank you all for coming. I'm just going to try and grab that. But the offer is here. If anybody needs any assistance with a week or a couple of weeks, you're really struggling to make the transition, I'm here to help. The whole team is here to help. All you have to do is email us. Send us over a module descriptor, and we are really delighted to be able to offer some suggestions in terms of what you could actually turn it into. So on that night, cheers. Thank you very much. Please look at the other sessions on the festival and just enjoy, because there's a lot there, and hope you find it useful. Okay, everybody, good night. Thanks for coming.